Hey everybody, it's Robot here from Vespa Motorsport and ScooterWest.com here in San Diego, California. So there's one maintenance item that I notice many of my customers tend to just overlook. And it's probably more critical than keeping oil in the engine. This relies on something that keeps your traction and keeps contact to the road, and it's keeping the correct tire pressure. You'd be surprised how quickly the smaller tires lose pressure. And unfortunately, that's inherent with the smaller tires. You have a large truck tire, it's just got more volume, and the percentage of sealing surface, which is the bead where the rubber tire on a tubeless tire seats up to the bead, is just the ratio's much higher on a scooter. So you just tend to lose the pressure quite frequently. It's just a good idea to get in the habit to check it, especially before you go on a long ride, or get in the habit of doing it every 2 or 3 weeks if you use the scooter regularly. Then you can kind of get a gauge on how much air you need to add to the scooter. You know, being 5 psi low isn't the end of the world, but being 15 psi low or more than that could be just downright dangerous. So let me show you how to do it. Of course, I got a very nice gauge here that's been calibrated. It's got a nice air chuck on it. Believe it or not, the little pencil style air gauges that have the stick that pops out, those are very accurate and don't need any sort of calibration like some digital gauge like this, or even the ones that are kind of the pressure gauge. It looks like the round gauge. Couple things I always look at, kind of just look at the tire, the condition, just casually every time. I look at my brake pads. I've covered how to check the brake pads, not something that you need to do much. They last quite a long time. And also check the stem. Give the stem a little tip. If you see any cracks in that stem, even if your tire's in good shape, I would recommend replacing the stem. So we'll go ahead and put a pressure gauge like this onto the front tire, pretty close, 24 psi. Keep in mind the scooter is cold. If the scooter is just off a hot highway, it's going to tend to read a couple psi high. I know it's not the end of the world, the difference, but we're going to get this right up to about 26, 27, which is about the sweet spot for the front tire on most modern Vespas, especially the GTS. So you may be asking, what is the correct pressure? Well, I can show you where the factory publishes that data. So for North America, they always have a VIN plate that's riveted to the scooter. For the last 15 years, it's always been fairly visible on the Vespa models, typically on the glove box. Sometimes they're underneath the seat, under the bucket. Not only have the vehicle identification number and the manufacturer date, it's got the gross vehicle weight, and buried in here is the size of the tire and the rim. So it says JAWR front, you know, that's the gross vehicle weight for the front, with a 120/70/12 tire, blah, 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 and the rim. And you want to look for the 180 kilopascals, but here in North America, usually go by PSI, and they recommend 26.1. I'm not sure why they give you the tenths, but, and it says cold there. For the rear, blah, 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 37.7. And I will tell you, 37.7 is a little high. That's great if you're running 2 up. Usually you want to go about 36 or 38. I tend to like a 32 or 34 for the rear on a GTS. They tend to ride a little nicer. Anything lower, you're just going to wear out the tire quicker. So one thing to keep in mind with the rear, if you're off the highway, this tire and the muffler is obviously going to be very hot. Go ahead and pull the cap off. Always pretty integral that you put the cap back on. Just this, a standard Schrader valve in there. And a little bit low, so that's 27 psi. We'll take it right up to 34. It's nice and easy with a gauge. I mean, we got shop air, so you don't hear the compressor going on, but that's in the back room. You can pump this up with something such as a bicycle pump. Even a scooter tire will take quite a few pumps to get it up to the correct pressure. And I recommend having a gauge that's within the range. So a bicycle pump may have a 0 to 160 psi gauge. That's not going to give you much accuracy for checking a tire like this. I'd recommend having a tire pressure gauge that goes 0 to 50 psi. You're going to get much more resolution in the pressure that you're reading off the tire. So whether you're an experienced scooterist, I hope you found that information useful, or maybe you're a beginner and just something that's just super easy to overlook. Something that you just take for granted, such as your tires. Take care of them, they're gonna last longer, and they're gonna operate much safer. One thing, a little side note, if you have a 2015 or newer Vespa GTS and you wonder why it's hesitating and just doesn't ride right, well, it's because you possibly have the tire pressures that are so low that it's causing the traction control, the ASR system, to activate inadvertently. So that's a common problem. I get people calling like, yeah, the scooter's hesitating, what's going on? I say check the pressure. So keep that in mind, 2015 and newer GTS. Thanks for watching. This is Robot here from Vespa Motorsport and ScooterWest.com. Until next time, stay safe.